Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Topic which we are going to discuss today is social appraisal. Project appraisal का हमने shadow wage rate पढ़ा, उससे अगला जो हमारा टॉपिक है social appraisal. अब social appraisal में हम क्या देखते हैं कि जब हम प्रोजेक्ट की बात करते हैं तो what will be effect on the socially, ठीक है, तो उसका socially जो impact है किस चीज़ पर, on the distribution of income. What is effect on the distribution of income socially of any project? So far we have ignored the effect of project choice on the distribution of income. The distributional consequences of projects can be included in the estimation of the shadow wage by altering the valuation of present to future consumption. के पीछे जो हमने shadow wage का पढ़ा है, estimation of shadow wage को the distributional consequences of the project can be included in the estimation of shadow wage by altering the value of present to future consumption 1 over S naught, increasing the value if consumption gain is too poor. What will happen? The value will increase if the consumption gain, whose consumption is increasing, if the consumption of poor is increasing, then the value will increase, and the value will decrease if the consumption gain is too rich. The distribution weighted relative valuation of present to future consumption can be thought of as a being composed of two parts. ठीक है? The first is the value of marginal increase in consumption to someone at the level of consumption C. पहली चीज़ what are we talking about? Marginal increase in consumption to someone at the level of consumption C divided by the value of marginal increase in consumption occurring to someone at average level of consumption C bar. So we are talking about two things: marginal increase in consumptions at the level of consumption and divided by value of marginal increase in consumption occurring to someone at the average level of consumption C bar. So we can say that WC over WC bar is equal to D. We said there are two parts. First is the marginal increase in consumption to someone at the level of consumption and divided by the marginal increase in consumption at the average level of consumption. एक सिंपल कंजम्पशन पे है, दूसरा हमारे पास एवरेज लेवल ऑफ कंजम्पशन पे है. Two things are required, we said, for the distribution weighted relative valuation of present to future. Second part is the value of marginal increase in consumption to someone at its average level of consumption. वही बात जो हमने ऊपर की है, WC bar to someone at the average level of consumption divided by the value of a marginal increase in public income. Let's denote this as WC bar over WG is equal to 1 over S naught. So now we have two equations, 10.22 where WC over WC bar is equal to D, and the second part which is required, the distribution weighted relative valuation of present to future consumption, is WC bar over WG is equal to 1 over S naught. So we can say that the distribution weighted relative valuation of present versus future consumption is equal to two parts we discussed, WC over WC bar multiplied by WC bar over WG is equal to, we can write it as D over S naught. The ratio of D over S naught can be thought of as the trade-off between raising the consumption level to the poor and accelerating economic growth. Now by this formula we can tell the consumption level of poor and accelerating economic growth. Up to now it has been implicitly assumed that D is equal to 1, as if it is average person who always gain from projects, or that the gains to individuals are valued equally if D is equal to 1. If greater wage is given to consumption of poor, if poors are mostly given consumption gains, then the value of D is equal to greater than 1. And if the rich, then the value of D is less than 1. However, it can seen that the substitution of D over S naught for 1 over S naught will alter the shadow wage. A higher D will lower the shadow price of labor and favor projects and provide consumption gains to the poor, okay, if the value of D is greater than 1. And lower D will raise the shadow price of labor and favor projects that benefit the wealthy people. Now the question is, how D is determined? To derive the distribution weighted utility function must be specified. One possible utility function with underlying assumption of diminishing marginal utility of consumption is, so the thing which we are introducing it here is utility function. UC is C raised to power n is equal to 1 C raised to power n, where C is consumption, n is the parameter of utility function, n is the reflection of the rate at which the marginal utility of consumption increase, and is measured as the elasticity of substitute between present and future consumption. The higher n is, the higher the rate of diminishing marginal utility. So again there is a given a detailed table, we will not do it. The value of consumption to different people or group, some standard needs to be taken and it makes sense to take the average. So to find out the D is equal to utility of C over utility of C bar, average level of consumption, is equal to average level of consumption over C. Equation 10.26 says that the marginal utility of consumption to someone with the level of consumption of half the average is 2. If n is 1 and D is equal to 2, the lower the level of consumption relative to the average, and the higher that n is, the higher the distributional weight will be. वही बात आ गई, the lower level of consumption है या तो एन हायर लेवल ऑफ कंजम्पशन, लोअर लेवल ऑफ कंजम्पशन पे आपके पास क्या होगी, लोअर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशनल weight होगा, and at the higher n higher the distributional weight and the greater bias to the project selection. Having discussed the determination of D, we must return to the valuation of S naught. We have already discussed one method of valuing S naught. We now have some independent check whether the value of S naught is plausible, valuable or not. One test is estimate at the chosen value of S naught, the value of C bar C at which the government is indifferent between its own income and consumption, so that the cost and benefits of increased consumptions are assumed to be equal, and the shadow price of labor is measured simply as the efficiency price of opportunity cost.